So let's talk really quickly about what we call the poetry focus statement. This is either a one or two sentence summary of the narrative situation, theme, and tone of a poem. So when you're writing your timed writing over a poem, you'll write a poetry focus statement. And you can use this as a potential thesis for this type of literary analysis essay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a poetry focus statement is. We'll call it PFS from now on, and how to write one. And there's even going to be a song that you'll get to learn. So the critical attributes of a PFS are: number one, include the title of the poem in quotation marks and the name of the poet. That has to be in every PFS that you write. Make sure that it is written in literary present tense, which means you're using present tense verbs, not past tense verbs, even if the poem was written in the past, which all of them obviously are. But you'll just use the present tense form of the verb, and that's why we call it literary present tense. In these poetry focus statements, you'll need to talk about the narrative situation of the poem. That's where you give a really, really brief who, what, when, where, why of the poem. So that could be like a brief synopsis or just a little bit of background information that's given in the poem itself. Indicate the theme in a concise way. So this isn't where you write a really in-depth theme statement like you've been learning. It's just a concise reference to the theme of the poem. And then lastly, identify the tone of the poem. So sometimes there are different tones throughout a poem, and so you would mention both of those. So you can mention shifts in the poem or anything like that. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about poetry focus statement. And in just a minute, we're going to look at some examples. And so make sure that you've memorized these critical attributes so that you can come into class and write a PFS. So let me skip past the song and show you some examples. So here's some practice examples where you can kind of deconstruct some of these PFSs on your own. So make sure that the syntax of a PFS is compound or complex. So compound means that it's two independent clauses separated by a comma and for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are compound conjunctions. Or it could be separated by a semicolon or something like that. Complex means that it's an independent clause and a dependent clause put together. So we're not using simple sentences here. So we're addressing both the literal that happens in the poem, so the narrative situation, and we're also addressing the thematic. So that's why you include a brief reference to the theme. So you're going to have some examples here for practice. And what I'd like you to do is to start reading these through the lens of the PFS. So draw a straight line under the literal part of the statement. So that's where this writer references the narrative situation of the poem. And it should be subordinated to the thematic. So that means it should be in the dependent clause. So clues for finding the dependent clause, it should have a subordinating conjunction on it. So when you see the because, since, although, therefore, however, whatever that subordinate clause is, that's going to clue you in that that's a dependent clause. Then draw a squiggly line under the thematic part of the statement. So that should be found in the main or independent clause. Some of these might not have this format, but for the purpose of you learning how to write these on your own, we want the literal part of your PFS to be in the dependent clause and the thematic part of your PFS to be in the independent clause. So the independent clause is what can stand on its own. It makes sense by itself. And then number 4, make sure that the PFS is articulated in a scholarly manner. So that's where you're using these verbs for literary analysis that you can find in your yellow pages. And then, of course, I've given you a lot of tone words in your yellow pages that you can look at. So here, look at number 1. It says, in Sonnet 116, William Shakespeare enviously expresses the meaning of true love. Through all life's struggles and hardships, it is the thing that never changes or guides us to the to the end. He demonstrates this by using complicated metaphors and elaborate diction. So you'll need to read this and follow the directions here, making sure that each PFS that you read, I think there are 5, has all of these critical attributes that you see on the front page. So make sure there's the title of the poem in quotation marks, name of the poet, that it's in literary present tense, that it gives the who, what, where, when, why, and that narrative situation, again, is the literal part of the PFS. And then number 4, concisely indicate the theme. That should be in the independent clause. And then make sure the tone is in there. And if there are differing tones, that they mention both. So there are just 4 or 5 practice ones here that you can do. Just remember to do your straight line and squiggly line, and making sure that it's a compound or complex sentence. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you the PFS song. So this is a way for you to be able to memorize how to write a PFS. It is to the tune, that's my dog, sorry. London Bridge is falling down. So it goes a little something like this, and I highly recommend that you practice this song to yourself. So it goes. Title in quotation marks, name of poet, first and last, literary present tense, who, what, where, when, why. Concisely indicate the theme, tones differ but are shifting. Complex syntax is the key, your manners should be scholarly. PFS, and it's imperative that you do the PFS chant at the end. So memorize the song, memorize the critical attributes, and complete the practice section down here. Thanks for tuning in.